Hello my friends and welcome to this short course. My name is Zeno and I'm the founder of ZenoTrustAcademy.com. In this course, I'm going to show you how to build a React starter template that is going to be useful for you for most of the React projects you build and would most likely speed up your workflow. So if you're building a front-end application with React, you're most likely going to have a home page. Okay, you're definitely going to have a home page, and that home page will have a header, a footer and some content. And after that, you most likely are going to have login, registration, auth pages. So this is the login page. We're going to have a registration page, and if the user forgets their password, you're most likely going to want them to have a way to reset their password. Also, you want to have some sort of state management in your application. So in this project, we integrate Redux Toolkit, and this name is actually coming from our data slice from Redux Toolkit. Now, depending on what kind of application you're building, you very likely are going to have a dashboard for the user to manage some of their data. So this is what the dashboard component is going to look like. You can add content to it and, upgrade it. Also, we have this responsive menu here in the dashboard. It also has a hover effect. If I remove my mouse, it's wide, it closes up. If I put my mouse, it opens up. Now, if I expand this guy, this is a collapsible menu. I'll click on profile. You also notice that I've created loading states. For when you want to make a HTTP request to some backend, you need to show the user some kind of loading state. And that was why I integrated the full screen loading, which is the first, and I also integrated the spinner, the loading spinner here. Then lastly, we are going to integrate, or we're going to build out a kind of list. So I have this my subscription that shows us a list of subscription and some actions that we can carry out. There is no way you're going to build a robust project without displaying some data in the form of tables. So by the end of this project, you would have built out a React starter template such that when you want to build new React app, you do not need to start from the absolute scratch. All you need to do is clone your project and get started building what exactly you want to build. Also, this project is responsive. If I collapse this guy to the mobile with, I open this guy up, you see how nicely everything looks. If I close that, it closes up. If I go to the dashboard page, you also notice that the dashboard is very responsive. So look at this. Mobile with, it works very fantastic. So look at that, very nicely done. So that's what you're going to be able to build at the end of this short course. Thank you so much, and let's get started. Hello guys, and welcome to the Ultimate React Templates course. I'm excited to have you on board. My name is Zeno and I am the founder of ZenoTrustAcademy.com, where you can always reach me, and you can also reach me on X, formerly known as Twitter. My handle there is at ZenoTrust. Now in this course, we're going to learn the concept of building React project, front-end project with React. The idea is that front-end projects usually have a lot in common. So if you want to build a project, you're most likely going to have a home or a welcome page. Very likely, depending on the complexity of the project, you're going to have auth pages such as login page, registration page, password reset page. And for all of those pages, you're most likely going to have a header and a footer component. You're also going to have state management. Well, industry standard for state management, Redux Toolkit stands out, but there are other state management packages like Context API for React, React Query, and the rest of them. Also, you could also have a dashboard either as an admin or for the users of your application, especially if you are building a SaaS. You're also going to have user profile, and you also would like to display tables on the page at some point. The data gets big and then you want to display to the user in form of tables. So those are the ideas and the things that made me say, okay, let me build a template, or let me show you how to build a template that is reusable in such a way that you don't need to start from scratch every time. So like I've said before, we're going to build a React template and we're going to integrate Redux Toolkit for state management. We're going to style the project with SCSS. I'm challenging those guys that are fanboys of Tailwind. You can actually take this project and recreate it with Tailwind. I'm also thinking of that as well. Also, we're going to host this project, and we're going to host it with vercel. The approach for this project is really going to be fast-paced. So what is the importance of having this kind of project or this kind of template that is reusable? Well, I'm going to show you in just a minute. So for example, this is a project I built, and it's a Stack e-commerce website where we integrate a fintech digital wallet. And most of what you see in this project was built using that same template. So it makes it very easy for you to just go ahead and start building out your project. All the loading spinners and stuff like that, we're going to show you how to build that reusable template. You know, you're going to have a profile page, and so basically most of what you see here are things that if you have that template, it's going to be really easy for you to work on. We're going to have a dashboard also in the template that we build, so all of that is going to be really very interesting as we go along. All right, so like I said, this project is going to be fast paced. So what that means is that you need to have the basics of HTML, CSS, and SAS. You need to know JavaScript, and you need to know you need to be confident with JavaScript. So hence I have courses on all of these topics, from HTML, CSS, and then modern JavaScript bootcamp. Most people that take JavaScript, they are not confident about their skills. So because of that problem, I created 100 days of JavaScript, which is project based. And that 100 days of JavaScript essentially helps beginners to sharpen their JavaScript skills. Also, if you've learned the JavaScript, you need to know React, and I have the perfect course for that. I'm listing out all of these courses because I'm going to leave discount links for you. Then there's a React mini project course also. If you've learned HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and React, you are a front-end developer, but you need to know a few other things which I will not get into here, like Git and GitHub. We also have courses for that. Now, if you want to take things to the next level, you can learn Stack. So I have a Stack suite course, beginner to advanced, where we build out an inventory management app. Then the next thing is you need to be very strong with Stack authentication. So everything that has to do with login, logout, and stuff like that. Then lastly, my last course is the Advanced Men e-commerce app, where I also integrate a fintech digital wallet. Now, depending on the platform where you're taking this course, I'm going to leave discount links for you, and it's just going to be the minimum that you can actually get the course. So just make sure to take advantage of that if you want to upgrade your knowledge. All right, so it's time for us to get started on this project. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Alright guys, so to get started, just make sure you have a folder on your desktop or wherever. I have this React template course folder. I'm going to open it up, and inside here I'm going to create a new folder which I'll call React template, and I'm going to open this folder with Visual Studio Code. So let's do that. Alright, so we have the folder open right here. Now what we want to do is we need to have like a React app on the folder. There are various options for you to create React app. You can use the create React app, you can use Vite, which I like to call Vite, and you can use Next.js. Now it doesn't really matter which framework or provider you use. The most important thing is that you understand how React application works. Now for me to keep things simple, I'm just going to use create React app. So I'll say npx and I'll say create -react -app, and then I want to create the app inside of this folder, so I'll just say a // and that's just going to create the app in the folder. I'll hit enter and give it a couple of seconds for it to create React app in this template. So I'll just wait for it and I'll be back. So the installation is complete. Next, you need to install some of the dependencies that you need to set up your templates. So I'm just going to bring that in. I'm going to install, okay, let me do like this and paste that in. So I'm going to install React icons, SAS, React Redux, and Redux Toolkit. So if you hit enter on that, it's going to start installing. While this is going on, I'm just going to quickly clean up my project. So I'll remove the things that I don't need in this particular project. So first off, let's remove the app test, which I'm not going to be using at the moment, the logo, the web vitals, and the setup test. So I'm going to go ahead and delete them. Now when you delete them, however, you will need to go to your index.js and remove them as well. So for example, we have web vitals here, which I'm also going to remove, and then I'm also going to remove it at the bottom of the page here. All right, so go ahead and save that file, then go to your app.js, and I'm just going to highlight it and do RAFCE to create a React starter template. And here I'm just going to change this to, I'll just say home page, so that's maybe H2, and that's just say home page. So now that I have that done, is there any other thing? Okay, so for my index CSS file, there are some styles that I already use, and you can actually use any kind of styling you want, but for this particular this particular project, I have some styles that I've already created, and I'm just going to paste them in and save. Now, as far as the styles for this project is concerned, you can find all our CSS file in this repository. So I'm going to leave a link to this particular repository in the description so that you have access to them. It's just my React starter template styles, and you're going to have access to all of the styles for this project. Now, I'm putting this out as a challenge. If you want to replicate this project with Tailwind CSS, which is becoming a little popular, just make sure you try it out and contact me so that I can talk about it at the end of the course, and post a link to your own version with other CSS framework. So having set up all of these, the next thing we need to do is to start the project. So all you need to do for that is to say npm start and hit enter. And just like that, we have our project running up in our browser and it says homepage. So I'll see you in the next video. Alright, so now let's go ahead and build out this homepage you see here, and it's going to contain the header component, the footer component, and then this homepage components. So I'm going to come here, and the first thing I want to do is inside of my source folder, I'm going to create two new folders. The first is going to be components, and the next is going to be the homepage. So here I would create a folder and I'll say pages. Alright, good. So now in my pages, I'll create another folder which I will call home, which is going to be where our home page is going to live. And then I'll create another one, so new folder, which I'll call 404. Now, the home page is going to contain the home component. So let me do a file this time and say home.js. And then, like I said, you already have access to the CSS file which I've added to the resources for this project. It's a link to the GitHub repository containing all the CSS files. So for now, I'm just going to bring in the small CSS file for the homepage component, which is right here. So I'll just bring it in and just dump it here. It's the SCSS file. So now we have this home page. Now for the components, I'm going to create two components. For the moment, it's going to be the header and the footer component. So here I'll do new folder and I'll call this header, which is going to contain the header component. But first, let me create the footer component or the footer folder. So footer, so now I can go ahead and create the files inside of them. So this is going to be footer.js, and it's going to have its own CSS file, which I'm going to bring in. And sometimes I use CSS modules because it's just a combination of several projects I've done before. So for example, this is a module, CSS module file, but it doesn't really change much. Then here we're going to create the header, which is just going to be header.js. And of course, I'm also going to bring in the CSS file for this particular header. So just bring it in and drop it in. All right, so let's not forget to do our RAFCE just to create a starter template so that we will have what we need. So for the header, also do RAFCE and save. So we have this thing set up where we have the home page, the header, and all of that. Now in the next video, what I want us to do is to create React router so that we can be able to navigate to the home page. Oh, by the way, there's one more thing I want to do, and that is to create the not found page. So in this my 404, I'm going to create a new component which I'll call not found.js. So this is just going to be RAFCE, and this is where when we don't have a particular page that the user goes to, this is the page we're going to redirect them to. So in the next video, we're going to go ahead and set up our route. I'll see you in the next one then. Alright, so now let's go ahead and set up our route. So the first thing you need to do is to install React Router DOM. So just make sure you do npm install React Router DOM, hit enter on that, and that's going to install it for you. Having done that, head over to your index.js and just import your browser router. Then make sure you surround your app with your browser router. So just do like this, tap that, and then surround the app with browser router. Go ahead and save. Then we can now head over to our app.js where we can now implement the rest. So let's go ahead and bring in our route and routes. So two of them like that. Then I'm just going to remove everything here and remove the div and make this div a fragment instead. Now inside of this fragment, we want to bring in our header first. So here I'll just say header, and then I'll just make sure I import it and reference it correctly. Then I'll also bring in my footer component. So footer, make sure you import it. Good. Now in between my header and my footer is where I will now reference my route, plural, and then inside of the route is where I'll now bring in my individual route, singular. So for example, I'm going to bring in the first route, which is the home route, and I'll import the component that's associated with this route, which is this home.js. Oh, forgive me, I did not do my array FCE, so I'll go ahead and do that and then save. Then I'll now bring in the home component from the pages. Now, having done that, we can go ahead and save, and if we come here, we're just going to see the header text, the home text, and the footer text. All right, so now that we've done that, the next thing we can do is we can reference the not found page. That's when a route does not exist. What do you want to show the user? So I'm just going to bring that in, and then I'm also going to import the not found from the not found page, and this is how you bring it in. By the way, it's just an asterisk that's going to be your path. Go ahead and save that, and that's it basically. So now in the next video, we can now go ahead and start working on the header components. See you in the next one then. Now let's start working on the header page. Now take a very good look at the header. What are the components you see here? So we have a logo, we have some links, and then when you shrink up the header up to the mobile width, you see that we have this icon here, and if you click on that icon, it expands the header like a slide out menu. So those are the components in the header. So I'll head over to my header, and the first thing I want to do is to import everything that I need. So use state, I'll import styles from the header CSS file. I'll import nav link and link. I would import these two icons. Those are the things that I need. Now, the first component I want to build out is this logo, and this logo is just basically text that we style. We just change the color of this particular text. So I'm just going to bring in that component. I kind of made it a standalone component. So just outside of this, my header here, I'm just going to paste it in. So this is logo. It has a class name of styles.logo, and basically it links to the home page. Then we have a h2 inside of it that says React Starter. That's it, very simple. Now, after having done that, I'm going to come inside of this header component, and I'm going to bring in a state, and the name of that state is going to be show menu, and that state is going to handle whether the menu is displayed or not, especially inside of the mobile menu. So if I click on this guy, show menu is currently set to true. If I click outside, show menu is set to false. So that's what the show menu is going to handle. The next thing is I'm going to bring in a function that will toggle the menu. So if show menu is true, that function will set it to false, and vice versa. So basically the function is toggle menu, and it sets show menu to the opposite of what it is. I would also bring in another function that is basically going to hide the menu. So whatever the state of the menu is, it will set show menu to false. Having done that, we can now come here and start working on the JSX. So because we want to have semantics in our HTML, we're going to make this header instead of a div, and this should be header as well. Very good. Now let me go ahead and remove this text because we don't need it as such. The first thing I want to do here is I want to do a DCNN, and I want to create a div with a class name of header. And then inside of this div, the first thing we'll now do is to reference our logo. So this guy we created up here, and basically you can just put it inside of curly braces and say logo. Next, we're going to create a nav. So I'll just have a nav component, which I'm not going to work on for now. Then at the end of the day, the last thing we're going to have after that nav is the icon, this very icon here. And I'm just going to bring it in to save time. So I'll come here and just below the nav, I'll just paste in the icon like so, and that's it. So it's inside a div, and it has a class name of menu icons, and then this is the icon, size of 28, and whenever you click on that icon, it calls this function to toggle the menu. So that's this function we created here, this very one. So that's it basically. Now remember, we've not added anything inside of our nav, but I'm just going to go ahead and save this page, and then I'll come to this project so that we can see what our header now looks like. So you see, we have this React starter template, and there's no menu because we've not added any menu item. But if I shrink this guy, you'll see that I also have this icon here. So now let's go ahead and add the menu so that at least we can have something. Inside of my nav, I'm going to add a class name to this nav, and I'll just slot that in. And basically the class name is a ternary operator, and I say that if show menu is equal to true, in other words, if the nav is currently displayed, then give it a style of show nav, else give it a style of hide nav. Now this menu is going to actually be very active when we're in the mobile with, because when we're in the mobile with, that's where we get to show or hide the nav. So if I come here and I go to the finished project, you see that the nav is shown, the nav is hidden. So that's essentially what is going on here. Also, there's one thing I want to draw to your attention. Whenever I click on this button here, you will notice that there's this transparent background that appears here, and if I click on that transparent background, it hides the menu. That transparent background is like an overlay, is like a nav wrapper kind of, that makes it so that you cannot access what is under except you close the nav. So we're also going to have that here. It's going to be inside a div that will just be a standalone div. So I'll just have a div that is just going to have an opening and a closing tag right where it is, and then I'm just going to bring in some properties for this div, so some attributes. I'll paste them in. So the first is some class name. I say if show menu is equal to true, then give this div these classes. So that's nav wrapper and show nav wrapper, else just give it a nav wrapper class. Then also I say that when you click on this div, which is the transparent background for the nav wrapper, or the transparent see-through, then when you click on it, I say call this function to hide the menu. That's basically what you see here. So if I click here, this is the nav wrapper div that we just added here, and you notice that when I click on it, it hides the menu. So that's what this function is doing. Meanwhile, it's inside of this nav, so there's a nav that has this div first. Now after this div, let me make sure that this div is properly closed. It has an opening and a closing tag. Then I'm now going to come here and have my unordered list. It's inside of this unordered list now that I will now show all of my menu items. So the home page, the dashboard, and all of these things you see, they are going to come inside of this unordered list. So let's go ahead and start adding them right now. Now the very first thing I want to do is that when you click on a link inside of your list of links, when you click on any of these guys, I also want this menu to be hidden. For example, if I click on my dashboard, you see that it hides the menu and takes me to the dashboard page. So what that means is that on this unordered list, I need to add this on click with the function of hide menu, so that when I click on any link item, it will also collapse the menu. Then you will notice that when we're on the mobile with and we click on this menu, the first thing that happens is that it shows us this logo, and then it shows us this X icon here. And when we click on the X icon, we're able to close the menu. So that occurs when we are in the in the mobile with. So let me bring in the first list item that will factor that in. So I'm going to come here and let me paste that in here like so. So look at this. This is a list item. It has a class name of logo mobile. And basically when we are on the mobile with, it shows us the logo, which is this React starter. And then it shows us this X icon, which is this guy you see here. And so that's the first thing we want to factor in. And like I said, it only displays when we are on the mobile with. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is to bring in the other links. So for example, the home page. So I'll come here, and after this first list item, let me just give some space here so that we're not confused. I'll slot in the next one. Now this is the home page, and you'll notice that we are using nav links instead of the regular links. That is because I want to be able to add an active class link to this guy. Let me explain. So if I expand this guy, you will notice that whenever we are on a particular page like this home page, there's this white underline that is below it to show us that this is the active page. If I come to the dashboard page, it moves. If I come to the login page, it moves. If I come to the register page, it moves. So that is going to be represented in a class which I named active links. Now I'm going to bring in that active links class so that we can actually use it everywhere. So let me just go to the top of my page, and just outside of this guide, maybe after my logo, I'm just going to come down here and slot it in. So this is how I added the active link class. I put it inside a variable, and I said that if this is active is found, then I want to add this styles.active, else I don't want to add anything. So I added an empty string. So I did this using a ternary operator. So if I scroll back down here, you will see here that in this nav link, I've added this class name of active links. Before we go too far, let me go ahead and save this guy and just look at what we have so far. So I'll expand this guy, come to this project, and you will see here that we now have the, okay, I can't find, oh, so this is the home page, it's at the end. So but that's not a problem. When we add other pages, it will come to the middle eventually. So now that we have this set up, I think we can go ahead and bring in other pages, so like the dashboard page, for example. So let me just bring that in. So it's going to be very similar. So just come down after this link, paste that in. Look at this is nav links. It's going to /admin/home, and then it has a text of dashboard. So that's about it for what we have inside the first unordered list. Now if you come to this finished project, you will notice that we have these links that are in the middle, and then these ones are at the end of the page. So what that means is that after this unordered list, I'm going to come down here and create another div that will separate, you know, the, what's it called, it will separate the links. So let me just bring it in. I'll just first create the div. So let me add some space. It's going to be inside our nav, by the way. So I'll say div, I'll tap that and open that up. Now this div is going to have its own special class, and I'll just, you know, bring it in. So I'll copy this the properties and come here, paste it in. So you see it has a class name of header right, because it takes these menu items to the right side of the page. Then it has an on click of hide menu. All right, so now we can go ahead and bring in other properties for this link. So first off, I'm going to bring in a span. So inside of this div, I'll create a span, and that span is also going to have a closing tag. So make sure you close that up, and then inside of my span is where I'll now bring in all of my links. So the first link is going to be the login, which is exactly what we have here. So I'll come here inside my span, paste that in. Look at this is nav links. Is going to /login, and it has the active class link. Then we're going to have the register. So let me bring that in as well. So I'll come here, bring in my register nav link, and just the name changes, nothing special. So we have the two links, and then we have a button. So as far as the button goes, I will come outside of my span. So you see where the span ends here, I'll just come outside of the span and just paste in my button. So it's a regular link, it's not a nav link, but it has a button, and the button has these classes inside of it. So I'll go ahead and save that, and let's come to the project and see. So you see here we have the home page, the dashboard page, login, register, and the get started button. So that's about it for the header. In the next video, we're going to build out the footer. I'll see you in the next one then. So for our footer, it's a little bit straightforward. We're going to bring in the styles from the footer module SCSS file. Then we're going to bring in two variables. The first is going to be the date variable, which is going to be the new date object. Then from that, we're going to get the year, which is date.getFullYear. Lastly, we're going to have our return statement. So let's return this footer text with this. Now basically we just have a div with the class name of styles.footer, and then we have this copy, we reference the year, and then we say all rights reserved. So it's just basically text. If I go ahead and save that and come to this project, you'll see here that we now have this copyright, the year, and then all right reserved. So that's about it for the footer. In the next one, we're going to build the home page itself. All right, so now let's go ahead and build out the home page. So first off, I'll head over to my home page file, and then the first thing I want to do is bring in my SCSS file. Having done that, I'm going to bring in a variable which I'm going to call name. So I'll come here and paste in that variable. Later on, this variable is going to be replaced by this by Redux Toolkit. So we're going to save this information inside of Redux Toolkit. But before we do that, let's just build out the home page. Now I also want to show you something in my home.scss file, and that is the fact that we have a background image, and that is just this URL image, and it's just inside of our SCSS file. So when you see that image, don't be surprised, I've shown you where it's located. So in my home page, I'm just going to go ahead and bring in my JSX. So I'll just highlight everything we have inside of our return statement, and then I'm just going to paste that JSX and explain. So basically we just have a div. Okay, I'll space this out a bit. We have a div here with a class name of home, and then we have another div with a class name of container, which comes from our index.css file. We have some text, and then this name, and then I reference this my name variable which I created here. I say that it's stored in data slice, which is in Redux Toolkit. But remember, we've not set up Redux Toolkit yet, but we're going to do that in the coming video. So I'm just going to go ahead and save this home page, and then that's just going to be displayed here. So you see, we now have our home page set up. So for any reason, if I want to build another project, all I just need to do is to remove whatever I have in my JSX and then start building up my own homepage, or maybe modify my header or my footer or whatever. But it's going to definitely speed up my workflow. In the next video, we're going to build the 404 page, because what you want is that if you go to a route that doesn't exist, you want to be able to show the user this page not found, so that they can know and maybe go back to the home page. All right, so that's about it for this one. I'll see you in the next one. Alright, so for our not found page, basically I just want to modify this div by giving it first of all a class name, and that class name is -- center all, and then I give it an inline style by setting the min height to 80% of the viewport height, so that at least the page is like, you know, not very short. Then I will now open up this div. Instead of just having this not found text here, I'm just going to add some very interesting things. So let's just add a h2 and a paragraph. So the h2 says page not found, looks like you're in a page you're looking for could not be found, blah blah blah. Then we're now going to add a button that will take the user back to the home page. So that button is going to be surrounded by a link. So what that means is I need to import this link here from React Router DOM, which I'm not able to do automatically, but I'll just do it manually by coming here and pasting it in. Then I like to add a break tag between this text and this link so that there's some space. So I'll just do BR, and then I'm just gonna save. So now if I come to this project I'm working on and I enter a route that does not exist and hit enter, you'll see here that we now have this page not found. And then if I click on this back to home, because it has a to property of /, it will take us back to the home page. So that's about it for our not found page. I'll see you in the next one. Alright, so now let's go ahead and set up Redux. Now remember, in our home page we saved this name John Doe inside of the home page itself. So let me open that up, home, and it's in home and pages. Yeah, so you see we created this name variable inside of the components, but what we're going to do now is we're going to create Redux, and this variable is going to come from Redux. So I'm just going to come here to my source and I'll create a new folder called Redux. And that Redux is going to have, first of all, let me create another folder inside it, which I'll call features. And then I'm also going to create a file inside it, which I will call store.js. Store.js. Hit enter on that. Now inside of the features, I'm just going to create another folder, which I'll call data, because the purpose of Redux is to store some data. I want that data to be on like a separate line. So let me just create new file, which I'll call text.txt. So now it will just put this data on a separate line. I just like things like that. All right, so inside of the data, I'll create a file which I'll call data slice. Remember, the purpose of Redux is to store data that will be accessible throughout your page. I'll do rx slice. No, this should be rx slice. And then I'm just going to have this template here. Basically, I just want the initial state to just have a name property, which I'm going to set the initial value to John Doe, and I'm just going to add Redux at the end so that at least we know that this data is coming from Redux. This data slice, I'm going to give it a name, which will be data. And then that's it. I'll go ahead and save. Now that we have at least one data point, I'm going to come to my store. So let's create our store. So the first thing we need to do is to import the configure store. So where is the store, guy? Oh, I created the store as a folder. It should be a file. So I need to delete this guy and make it a file. So inside of Redux, I'll right click and then I'll say new file, which I'll call store.js. Exactly. Now inside the store, make sure you import configure store, and then I'm just going to come down here and say export, and we're going to have a variable const store, and that's going to be equal to configure store, and it's going to be open up like this, and then it's going to have an object with some properties. The word property we're interested in is the reducer property, which is going to also be an object, and we're now going to reference the data that we've created. So data, and I'll just say data reducer. Now you notice that we've not created this data reducer, so we actually have to create it. So I'm just going to copy that import statement here and slot it in. So this is data reducer. I'm importing it from Redux features data and data slice. So I can go ahead and save. Now when you save this file, if you have Redux Chrome extension installed and you click on it, you will be able to see, oh wait 1 minute, Redux Dev Tool. Okay, for some reason I'm not seeing it, but I'm not going to waste time on that. So now that I have this guy imported, I need to come to my index.js and bring in my store. So index.js, and then I'm just going to import my store. So to import your store, you're going to need two things. First off, you're going to need a provider component. Well, not necessarily a component, but just a provider. So you're going to import this provider from Redux Toolkit, and you're also going to need to import your store. So having done that, you now come in here and surround this your app with your provider components. So instead of just saying app here, I'll remove the app and then I'll surround it with the provider component. The provider component is just going to point to our store. So it has this store property that will point to this store. If you go ahead and save that now and it compiles, then you'll be able to see that data inside of your Redux Toolkit extension. If you click on this guy now, you should be able to see it set up, and you see we have data and the name is John Doe, which is saved in Redux. Very good. So now that we have that set up, we can now head over to our home page, and instead of having this name variable saved directly inside the home page, what we can do is we can bring it in from Redux directly. So how am I going to do that though? I'm just going to come here, remove this guy. So I'll delete this name variable and then bring it from Redux. So this is name, and we're using use selector, and we're selecting our data slice. So state.data. Yeah, I'll go ahead and make sure I import use selector. So let's import that. Oh, for some reason it's not importing. I don't know exactly why, but it was importing before. So I'll just copy it and just slot it in like so, and then I'll go ahead and save. Now watch here, you'll see here that it has changed from John Doe to John Doe Redux. So what that means is that we've set up Redux Toolkit and we're able to get data from Redux Toolkit. So that's about it for setting up Redux Toolkit. In the next one, we're going to start working on the auth pages. All right, now before we work on the auth pages, which is login register pages, we need to build a component that will be reusable, and that's a card component. So if you look in this login page, you'll notice that we have this card-like feature around the login component itself. So we want to build that now. So I'm going to head over to my component, and inside of that, I'll create a card. So component, I'll create a folder which I'll call card, and then inside of the card, I'll create a file which will be card.js. Hit enter on that and then just do RAFCE to create the card barebone component. Now what I'm going to do inside the card component is, of course, it has a CSS file. So let me bring in the CSS file very quickly. It's a CSS module file. So inside of the card, I'll bring that in, and then we're just going to work on the card itself. Now first off, let's bring in the let's import the CSS. So I'll just do like this and say import styles from card, and then you notice that it has a div here. So in this div, we're going to give this div a class. So it's just going to be like a the class that the components will have, and I'm just going to bring it in as well. So it's going to be class name, and here we're just saying styles.card, and then we are giving it a card class. Now this card class will be determined wherever this card component is used. So it's going to be like a prop. So here I'll destructure, and then I'll say card class. So that's one. Then also this card is going to have children. Remember, the card component is going to surround something. So whatever that card component surrounds is going to be regarded as the children of that card. So here I'm just going to come here and say children. You know what, let me make the children first. So children, and that should be small letter obviously. So children, and then I'll just give a comma there. So inside of this card guy here, I'll just have my curly braces, and then I'll say children. So this is about it for the card component. I'll go ahead and save, and in the next video we can now go and start building in the login page. See you there. So now let's go ahead and build out our auth pages. So inside of my pages folder, I'm going to have another folder which I'll call auth. And then inside of the auth, we're now going to create 3 new files. The first is going to be login.js, like so. The second will be register.js, and the last will be reset.js because it's for resetting the password. So reset.js, and lastly we're going to bring in one CSS file, auth module CSS file, that will be common to these 3 files. So inside of the login, let's go ahead and create our barebone component, rafce, save that, do the same for register page, save that, and do the same for reset page, save that as well. Now that we've now that we've done that for those 3 pages, we now need to create the route for the 3 pages as well. So I'm just going to bring it in its register, login, and reset. So I'll just slot that in after my home page, but before my not found route. So paste that in. So this is for the login, the register, and the reset. So I'm just going to go ahead and import the 3 of them, 1, 2, and 3. Very good. Go ahead and save. And now we can come here and click on login. So login, you see we have this text. Register, we also have this text. Of course, we don't have a link here for the reset, so that's going to come in much later when we build out the login page. So but as far as we know now, we've created the pages and the route for the auth. So in the next video, we're now going to start working on the login page itself. Alright, so now like I said, let's go ahead and build out the login page. We're going to start from the login. Now before we build out these pages, we're going to bring in the images that will be associated with these pages. For example, this is an image. So I'll come here and then I'm just going to bring in my, inside of my source, I'll bring in my assets folder. That's where all my images are contained. And I'll just drop it inside here. Now this asset folder is also found in our repository. So if you go to the styles repository, you see here that we have assets there. So just make sure you find it and so that you come over so that we can continue. Now that I've done that, inside of my login page, I will now import all of the things I need. So I'll bring that in. I've imported the styles from the auth module CSS file. I imported this login image from the assets folder, and then I brought in link, and then I also brought in this icon, which is the Google icon, which I'll use much later. So now that I've done that, let's come here and let's build this thing out. So first off, this div is going to be changed into a section, and then I'm just going to bring that in. So now this section, let's give it a special class from our file. So in this guy here, I'm just going to paste in that class name. It's going to have a class name of container and then styles.auth, which is going to come from this our modules file. So having done that, the first thing we have inside of our login page is this image. So let's bring in the image. Now I'm just going to come here after my section. Like I said, I'll come here and slot down the image. It's going to be inside a div with a class name of styles.img, and then it's just going to be this image tag that will point to the login image which we imported from our assets folder. That's it. We give it a width of 400, and basically that's it. The next thing we now have is this login component itself, which is going to be inside of this card. Remember, we created a card component in the previous video. So after this first div, I'll come down here and bring in my card. Tap that and make sure you import the card from, okay, so I need to open the card so that I can import it automatically. So open the card component and then come back to your login component and tap that. You'll be able to import it from the component. So what do we have inside the card? Well, basically we have a form that has all of these plenty things inside. Anyway, let's just do it like this. Let's just first create a div that will have a class name of styles.form, and let's go ahead and close that div up. So it will say div. I'm trying to close it up. Okay, so now it's closed. And then what do we have first? We have some text. That text will just say login, and then after the text we now have this form. So I'm just going to come down below my text and have my form. I'm not submitting the form, by the way, because it's just a template. Remember, the form is just going to have 1, 2, and 3 inputs. So the first input, the second input, and then a button. So let me go ahead and bring in the first and second input so that we can see something regular, something you've done before. So this is the first input. It is a type of text. I'm going to save it. It has a placeholder of email and is required. The second input is a type of password, placeholder, and is also required. If you come to this project we're currently building, you'll see that we now have the first two inputs, but we don't have a button yet. So let's go ahead and add a button. So I'll come here and bring in a button, and after my second input I'll slot in my button. So maybe I should collapse this guy so that we have space. Save that, and you see we now have a button here. So input login. Obviously, when you want to work on the full project, all you just need to do is to add your state to these guys and then begin to work on it. So having added the button, you'll notice that we also have this reset password functionality, and then we have this option to log in with Google at the bottom. So let's add this reset password text here. So it says reset password text, and then we have this or text. So I'm just going to come inside of my form. It will just be this guy, a div in which we'll have a link that goes to reset, and then to just say reset password. Then below that, we're going to have this paragraph text that will say or. Now after the form is where I will now come and add this button to log in with Google. So let me bring in the button, and like I said, it's going to be after the form. So I'll come after my form, and then I'll just slot in the button. These are the styles for the button, and it's just having this Google icon inside of it that says login with Google. If you go ahead and save that, you would come here and you'll notice that we now have a button. The last thing we need to do in this component is to have this text that says don't have an account, register. And like I said, that's just going to come after the button. So because after this button we have the text, so I'm just going to come after the button and then slot in that text. Look at it, it's in a span. It has a styles, and then it says don't have an account, and then we have a link to the register page. If you go ahead and save that, you come here and to this project, you notice that everything is now complete. So if you click on reset password, it takes you to the reset page, which we don't have anything yet. If you click on the register, it takes you to the register page. So what that means is that in the next video, we're now going to work on the register page, which is very similar to this page. So if you click on register, you see that it's very similar, just that this time we have the form on the left and the image on the right. All right, so I'll see you in the next one then. All right, let's go ahead and build out the register page, and it's very similar to the login page. So what we can do is I'm just going to first of all come to my register.js page, and then I'll just bring in my styles first, then I'll bring in the register image, then the rest is just the card and the React router link. Now instead of me to reinvent the wheel, which I've already done before, I'm just going to head over to my login page and copy all of my JSX. So you see, I'll just come here and copy everything that you see here, head over to my register page, and then replace it, this JSX here. Okay, good. Now if you notice, you'll notice that we just need to make some changes. So for example, this text needs to say register, yeah, and then in the register page, the image comes on the right side, unlike in the login page where the image is on the left side. So what we need to do is that this image you see here, first off, let me change this to register image, which is this image we imported here, and then I'm just going to take all of this div that contains the image, I'll cut it and put it after the card, so the card comes first. So after my card, I'll just bring in the image. Now you'd also notice that we don't need this button here, because when we are doing registration, we don't want to have the button. So I'm just going to remove the button as well. All right, so I'm also going to remove the or and this reset password. Yeah, so instead of it to say don't have an account, it will say already have an account, login. So here, instead of saying don't have an account, I'll say already have an account, login. So this will change to login, and then here it's also going to change to login. Now of course some things here would also change, so let me first save it so that we just see what we have at least. So this is the project I'm working on. I'll go to register. So you see we have register, email, password, and the button. The button is still saying login, so we need to change it to register. Meanwhile, we also want to add the confirm password field. That's going to be straightforward. So let me first change the button for it to say register, and then I'm just going to duplicate this last password field, and then I'll change this to confirm password. Confirm password. So that's it. If you go ahead and save, then you should be able to see that the changes you effected have been implemented here. So if you click on login, it takes you to the login page. If you click on register, it takes you to the registration page. So that's about it for the register page. In the next one, we're going to build the reset password page. See you there. So now let's go ahead and build the reset password page, which is going to look like, okay, so I want to show you what it looks like. So it's going to look like this. Okay, good. Now I'm going to come to my reset password page, and first off, like I've always done, I'll import the things we need: the cart, the reset image, which is located in the assets folder, and then the styles and the link. Then I would also go back to my login page and copy the JSX and come here to my reset page and then paste it in. Now let's just go ahead and delete the things we don't need. So this will say reset password. So here we're going to say reset password, and I don't even think we need all of this. I'm not sure. Okay, yeah, we need it, reset password. Then of course this would also change to reset image. Okay, so that's it. Now if you look at the reset image, you'll notice that we have just one input field, which is email, and then the reset password text. So we're going to come here inside of our form, and we're just going to remove every other thing except the email. So let's remove the password field, and let's change this text to say reset password. So I'll come here, replace this login to reset password, and then we don't need this or text, we don't need this link that says we don't need all of that, we don't need this button. The span, however, we're going to replace this span with something else. Or no, I'll remove the span actually, and then after the button, which is this button here, I'm just going to add something else. So here, let me just grab show you what I want to add. So it's just going to be this link that will say login or register, and I'm just going to add it below my button. So it's going to be inside a div, by the way. So I'll come here after the button, paste that in. Look at this, it's a div with a class name of styles.links, and then it just has a link tag to the login page and to the register page. If you go ahead and save that and then come to the finished project, you will see now that we now have it displayed here. So that's it for the reset password page. Now in the next one, we're going to now proceed to work on the dashboard. See you there. All right, now let's go ahead and work on the dashboard, which is, I would say, like the admin, either administrative functions for the user or for the owner of the website. But I just choose to call it dashboard here, and currently it doesn't exist. So I'm going to come here, and we're going to start by creating, inside of our pages, I'll create an admin folder. So this is in pages, admin, and then I'm just going to create two files. The first will be admin.js, and it's going to have its own CSS file. Meanwhile, let me just do rafce here. Sorry, rafce, and then I'm just going to bring in the CSS file and just drop it in here. So this is going to be the main admin page. Now I'm also going to come into my components, and this admin page, for example, if I go to the finished project and I go to dashboard, you'll see that this is the admin page, yeah, or this is the dashboard. Inside of it, it has like different components. So for example, this is a sidebar, it's a sidebar, and this is like various admin pages that will be inside of this main admin page. So what I'll do is, inside of this component, I'll create another folder which I'll call admin. And okay, so inside this admin now is where I'll now create things like the admin sidebar. So sidebar, and let me just create another folder inside, new folder, I'll say home. So for example, the admin home page. Then I'll create a last one which I'll call profile. All right, so now inside of these three guys, let's just create templates, React template. So file, and I'll say sidebar bar.js and It's also going to have its own CSS file. So let me just bring that in, which is here. Okay, so it's SCSS, sidebar.scss. I'm going to do the same for the home and the profile. So let's do home.js, and let's see if it has. Okay, so it does have. So let me drop it here, and then profile. So let me do profile.js. And of course, I'll just bring in the CSS as well, which is, where is it? Okay, let me just locate it, and I'll just bring it in. So inside of profile, yeah, so you see now we have all of the things that we need for this guy to work. Now I think I forgot. Let me just create the, let me save this file, and let me just create the barebone array fce here. So that's the first. Then I'll do the same for the home. That's the second. And lastly for the profile, third. Save. So now that we have that in place, what we need to do is to create a route, the admin route. So what I'll do is I'll just come here to my app.js, and I can easily just duplicate one of these routes like so, and then I'll just change this. So my admin route is going to have /admin and then / something. So here I'm just going to add this asterisk so that this will be determined from another folder. And then of course I'll change this to my admin, and make sure you import it, and that's your admin route. All right, so now that we've done that, in the next video we're now going to start working on this admin.js file itself. I'll see you in the next one then. All right, so let's proceed to work on this admin page. So what I'll do first is, and this admin page is like the main admin page. So what I'll do first is, let me just remove all of this JSX, and I'll start by saying, wait, so DCNN, and this is going to have a class of admin. Now this admin div is going to have two divs inside of it. So let me remove this guy. It's going to have two divs inside of it, and the first will be, wait, why is it showing a yellow line? Let me save that first. Okay, so now this div is going to have two divs inside of it. So DCN, and the first one is going to be nav bar, and I should have called it sidebar actually, but it's still a nav bar. Then the next one will be the main content on the page. So let me show you what this actually means. So if you come to the finished project, you see here that this is the admin dashboard. It has a nav bar, which is this sidebar here, and then it now has this main content. So that's basically what we're referring to when we say the admin page has two content, the navbar and the content. So this is the navbar and this is the content. So now inside of this navbar, basically we just want to display the sidebar components. So sidebar, import it and then close. Then inside of this content, you want to now have the routes. Okay, and this is called nested routes. So here I will say routes, I'll tap that, and then let me make sure I import it. So import it from React Router DOM. So inside here now we can now have the routes to the various admin pages. So for example, I'll copy this guy, slot it in, and let me import this route. And so this is going to be home, and it's pointing to, now this home page is not the regular home page, it's the home page inside of the admin components. So make sure you import it correctly. So that's the first. And this guy you see here, home, is actually an extension of this admin routes here. So it will now be admin /admin /home, which is what we've done here. All right, so let me bring in the second one, which is going to be for the profiles page. I'll come here, slot that in. So this is profiles, and then I'll just bring in the profile component. Remember, we've not built out this component, but I'm just setting up this admin page so that you can see. If I save it and I go to the admin dashboard, you see it's going to be very ugly. So you see here, what we have is this sidebar, and we have this home text here. So in the next video, what we're going to do now is we're now going to work on this sidebar. You see, it's very nice looking sidebar with drop down menus. All right, so we're going to work on that in the next video. I'll see you there. Now let's go ahead and build out the sidebar. So the first thing I want to do is let me click on this sidebar, or just put my mouse on it to hover on it. You see that we have this menu dashboard, and this one is collapsible. It has a profile, and this is my subscription tab. Now these menu items are actually coming from an array of menu items. So what I'll do first is I'll come inside of my source, I'll collapse this source, and I'll create a data folder. So data, and inside this data I'll create a sidebar.js. It's not a component, it's just a regular file. So sidebar.js, and inside my sidebar.js I'll just slot in my sidebar guy, and it's just this menu that is an array of objects. So this is the first object. It has a title, it has an icon which we import from React icons, and then it has a path. So that's the first one. The second one here has a title, an icon, and then it has this children property. Now of course here I'm actually just going to correct it to children. So children that now has a title and a path. Mind you, you can also give these children an icon if you like. So you can like grab an icon and slot it in here, but I choose not to do that. But it's possible. So we export the menu. So now this menu, we can get to use it in our sidebar. So go ahead and save that, and then we can now start working on the sidebar. Now for this sidebar, remember it has a CSS file, but I'm also going to create another file inside. I'll call it sidebar item. So let me create a new file, which is a component to sidebar item.js. So they are all going to work together. Now allow me to close all the files that we're not using. So for my sidebar item, I'm just going to do array-fce to create a barebone component, and then we're going to start working from the sidebar.js. Remember, we've created this sidebar array, which is the contain the array of menu items. Yes, so let's start working on the sidebar.js. So I'm going to start by bringing in all the imports that we need for this particular component. I'll just paste it in at the top. So use state, the sidebar SCSS file, some icons, the menu from the data and sidebar, that's this menu here. Then I'll also bring in use navigate, and then I'll also bring in the sidebar item, which I've not used yet. Having done that, let's bring in a variable. That variable, I'll call that variable is open. So let me do like this, and I'll paste that in. This is open, and basically this variable is going to monitor whether the menu is, this menu here is expanded or open or not. So that's just basically what we want to do. So now that we've done that, we're now going to have some functions. The first function will be to toggle the is open. So I'll come here, slot that in, look at it, toggle, and it's just set is open to the opposite of what it is. Then the next set of functions will be to close the sidebar and to open the sidebar. So here I'm just going to come down, slot that in, and basically for the close we're setting is open to false, and for the open we're setting is open to true. Okay, so initially the is open state is also set to true. Then I'm going to bring in two other items. So I'll bring in this use navigate, and I'll attach it to this variable name called navigate, and then I'll create this function that says go home. Basically it will just navigate to the /admin/home. What that does is that if you, like for example, now if you come to, let's say, account and profile, when you come over here and you click on this link icon, it will take you to the admin home page. So that's just basically what we did here. And I think I should have changed this link icon to maybe a home icon or something like that, but it's still fine. You can change it to whatever you want. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can now start working on the JSX for this sidebar. So the first thing I want to do is I want to give this guy a class name of layout, because it's just going to be like the sidebar layout. Let me remove this text, and then we can start working on the inside here. So now that we have this in place, right, what I want to show you is I want to shrink this guy up to the mobile width, and if I hover on this guy, you see here that we have this on this left side here, we have that transparent background, transparent div that covers the guy. or the page rather. So we're going to do that, and it's going to be a standalone div. So, and that's important for when we're in the mobile view, so that when you expand this menu, it will cover a significant portion of the screen. So you don't want these other parts to be, easily seen by the user. So what we're going to do is, it's going to be like a standalone div, and I'm just going to bring it in so that you can see. It's going to be a div with both an opening and a closing tag. Look at the class name. I say that if its open is set to true, then I want it to have these two classes, sidebar overlay and show overlay. Else, I just want it to have the sidebar overlay. Then I give it a style. I say that, okay, for this style here, we don't actually need this style, so I'm just going to remove it. I think I forgot to remove it when I finished the project. So for this overlay div, we're going to give it an on-click of close sidebar. So when we're on the mobile view and the user has to, let me actually go to the mobile view to show you. So if I right click and inspect, okay, so this is it on the mobile view. Now if I open this menu, you see here we have this overlay. If I click on this overlay, then it closes the sidebar. So that's basically what I have here when I say close sidebar on click. This overlay, when you click on it, it will close the sidebar, and that's this function here. So having inserted the sidebar, we now need to go ahead and build out the other components of the sidebar. Yes. So I'm just going to come after this div. Let me give some space, and I'll create another div. So let me open that up. Now this div is going to have some properties. So first off, it's going to have a class name of sidebar. That's the first. Let me just put it on a new line. Then it's going to have an inline style. So I'll copy that, and then I'm just going to slot it in, then I'll talk about it. So the inline style will be for the width. And here I'm saying that if is open is set to true, then I want it to have a width of 230 pixels. Else I want it to have a width of 60 pixels. For us to visualize this, I have to come back to the regular laptop menu or laptop width, and you see here that is open is currently set to false. So you see this is 60 width, 60 pixels, but immediately I put my mouse on it, it expands and it becomes 230 to show the full sidebar menu. If I remove that, it reduces. That's what we do here when we said if the width is open, then we want this, else we want this. The next thing we want to do is that we want to have a on mouse enter and on mouse leave property, so that when you hover on that guy, you're going to either display the full menu or shrink it. So I'm just going to paste that in, and this is on mouse enter, I open the sidebar. On mouse leave, I close the sidebar. So that's what we need. Now the next thing we have here is that we have this top section of the sidebar menu where we have this icon, and then this I would say menu icon also, or hamburger icon, half hamburger icon. So it's just going to be a top section div that we're just going to create for that purpose. So after this first div here where we create the sidebar, I'm going to come inside it and create another div that is going to have a class name of top section. So class name, and I'll say top. This time I use an underscore section. I can't even remember why I did this, why I used an underscore. I should have just used a hyphen, but that's fine. The most important thing is that you understand. Now inside of this top section, like I said, we're going to have the logo, which is this guy, this logo, and then this icon here. So let's come in here, and I'll just say dot logo, and tap that, and that's the div. And we're going to give it an inline style also, and basically that inline style will just be a display style. So I'll just come here, paste it in. I'll say that if is open is set to true, then display block, else display none. All right, that's for the logo itself. So inside of that, I will now display my link, and that link, sorry, the icon, and that icon is going to be, let me show you this icon you see here. All right, this link icon, this one. So here I'll come here and slot it in. So let me just tap this and slot it in. So this is the link. It has some properties. The size is 30. If you click on it, it calls this function to go home, which is like the admin home page. So that's it. Now after this div, let me save this guy. and let's just see what we've done so far. So you see, so we have the link. After this one, we'll now have the hamburger icon. Now that hamburger icon is just going to come immediately after this. So this is the link here. This is the div holding the link inside the top section. So after that one, I'm just going to come down and paste in this div. The next div is going to have a class of bar, and it's going to have this inline style, which is just going to have some margin left property. Then it's going to have that hamburger icon, menu icon. If you go ahead and save that and come here, you'll notice that we now have this guy here. All right, so the next thing we now need to do now is to display the menu items, because if you come here immediately after this top section, we now have the menu items, and that's going to be like a map functionality. So I'm just going to come after, let me come here. All right, so this is after this div. I'll come here, have my curly braces, and then I'll say menu.map. So let's open it up. I'll represent every item inside as an item, and I'm also going to have the index. Then I would open it up with an arrow function and return something. So let's return something, which in this case is going to be our sidebar item. So make sure you import it. Now import the sidebar items, and we're going to give it some properties or some props. So the first one is going to be the key, which is going to be our index. Then we're going to give it other properties. So let me just bring them in. I'll come here and slot them in. Oh, sorry, I didn't copy that well. So let me just copy that properly, and then I'll just slot that in. So I'm going to send this item. So this one, I'm going to send the menu index as the index. Oh, I don't need this menu index, forgive me. I'll send the is open and set is open state. So if you remember, we created this is open and set is open. So I'm sending all of that with the as props to the sidebar item components. So now I can go ahead and save this file, and if you come here to this project, you will see that we now have sidebar item displayed twice. So now it's in the sidebar item that I will now go ahead and style what the menu should look like. All right, so I'll see you in the next one then. All right, so now let's go ahead and work on the sidebar items, which will just display the menu on the page. So I'm going to come here and I'll go to sidebar items. I'll start by importing the things that we need. So use effect, use state, this icon, and the nav link. Now let's bring in some state for the sidebar item. So I would like to explain. So when you open this sidebar item, first of all, you notice that this is just a standalone menu, while this is expandable. So this expandable menu here has like what I would describe as child menu or child menu item or children. So we're going to have like different display for the single menu and the menu with children. Remember, it's also expandable. So the first thing I want to do is I want to be able to know whether a menu is expanded or not. So I'm going to bring in a state to have that information, and that state is going to be called expand menu. All right, so the first thing is before we proceed, let's bring in the props for this particular component. So remember, in the sidebar.js, when we reference this guy, we gave it some props: the item prop, the is open prop, and set is open prop. So I'm just going to bring in those three sets of props inside of the sidebar item. So come here, and here I'll just slot that. So item set is open, and then set is open. Now next, let's have a use effect, and I'll say that anytime this menu item is not open, in other words, it's not like this, then I want to make sure that this item is not expanded. In other words, it's collapsed. So if I remove my icon here, you see that immediately it collapsed this menu with children. So that's what I want to do, and it's going to be inside the use effects. So I'm just going to bring that in. So I'll come here and slot that in. So here I just say that if it's not open, then set expand menu to false. That's just basically what I did. Now I'm also going to bring in another function that will hide the sidebar. So let me come here and I'll say hide sidebar. Basically where setting is open to false, which is from this guy here, this props here, and then we're also setting expand menu to false, so this will hide the sidebar. And we're going to call this function every time that we click on a menu item. So for example, if I click on profile, you see that it's going to hide the sidebar, and you appreciate it more when you're on a mobile device. All right, so that's that. Now, instead of us to just have this return statement here, what I want to do is I want to have an if statement instead, and I want to check based on whether the item has children or not. That's the menu item. So I'll come here and I'll say if, and here I'll say item dot children. Then, in other words, if the menu item has children, then I want to return something. So let's just have a div. I'll just put a simple div there. Else, I want to return something else. And I'm also going to have just a simple div there. Come on. So tap that. Good. So you see, now this first return statement will be for the menu item that has children, so this expandable menu, while the second one will be for this single menu. So if you remember, if you come to the sidebar.js menu file, you see that this first one now is just a standalone dashboard menu. Meanwhile, the second one is this account, but it has children. Do you get what I'm trying to do here? So we're going to have different JSX to represent the two of them. So now that we've done that, let's actually work on the second one first. That's this one, this else part. I'm going to work on that one first. So let's open that up, and you see this div we have here. It's going to have a key and a class name. So wait, let me see, how did I go about that? Okay, it's not going to have a key, rather it's just going to be a nav link because it's a single guy, so it's just going to be a simple nav link. So I'm going to change this div to a nav link, which I've already imported, and the nav link is just going to have some properties. So first off, I'll just slot in those properties. So it's going to go to items dot path, and that is pointing to this guy you see here. So you see this menu item here, it has a path property which simply specify where you want that link to go to when it is clicked. So that's what we have here in the sidebar item. So items.path. Now you see this active link. It is very similar to the active link we did before. Like for example, when you click on this home page, but because it's here, it has to be a different CSS file. So for example, if I click on profile and I expand it, you'll see that it has this border when it is active. Meanwhile, if I also click on this guy, you see that it has this border and the background also changes. So that's the active link. Aha, we've done it before. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring in the variable that will represent both the active link and the active sublink. So this standalone link now is a link, but this profile is a sublink. So if you open it up, you see it's a sublink. It's not just like a standalone link like this one. So I'm just going to bring in two variables that will represent that. So let me come here and paste it in. So the first one is active link, and it has going to have a class of active. Meanwhile, we also have active sublink, and it's going to have the class of active or link. All right, so now that that's in place, we can now go ahead and finish up what we have inside of this our nav link. So the first thing is, inside of my nav link, I'm just going to paste in this div, and this div is just going to have a class name of sidebar item and then sidebar parents, s-parent. It will have an on click of hide sidebar. So whenever you click on the link, it will hide the sidebar automatically. And like I said, you're going to appreciate it more when you are on a mobile device, when you don't have the on mouse over effect. All right, so having created this div, which I think I should tab this one. Having created this div, now what is going to be inside this div? Well, we're just going to have another div that will now have two things. So it will have the icon and the text, this link text. So let me just bring that in as well. So I'll just slot it in very quickly, and like so. So we're going to have another div that will have a class name of sidebar title, and inside of it we'll say that if there is an item.icon, then display the icon. Then the second one, I'll say that if it's open, that in other words, if this sidebar item is open like this, then that's only when I want to display the title. So if you come here, you notice that the title is not being displayed. Meanwhile, when you put your mouse on it, you now see the title, which is this text here. So that's basically what I just said here. If I go ahead and save this guy and come to this project we're currently working on, you'll see immediately that we will now have, okay, so you see we now have this dashboard because it's a standalone link. Now in the next video, we're now going to work on the links that have children. All right, so I'll see you in the next one then. So now we've worked on this first displaying the standalone links. Now we want to work on displaying the links that have children. So I'm going to come here, and if you just scroll up, you see where we have the if statement. So if the item has children, then we want to display it in a certain way, which is quite different from the first. So I'll just remove this guy here, and what I want to do is to display this first div. Now if you look at this div, you'll notice that it has a class name that is a ternary operator. So I'll say, first of all, if expand menu is equal to true, which is this variable we have here, yeah, then I want it to have these classes, else I want it to have these classes, and then this is the closing div. So that's the first. So let me just go ahead and save this one, and then I'll just go ahead and open it. So inside here, I'm going to have another div, all right, and that div is just going to represent what you have here. So if you expand this guy, sorry, before you expand this guy, you see here that we have this title account, and we also have this icon, and when you click on it, the icon changes like position to point down. So you may not have noticed that before, but that's actually an animation. So that's what I want to do now. So first off, it's just going to be a div that will have a span inside of it. I'll paste that in and then I'll explain. So look at where the div starts here. It has a class name of sidebar title, and it has an on-click of set expand menu to the opposite of whatever it is. What that means is that if you click on it, it will expand. If you click on it, it will collapse. So that's what it means here. Then inside, I now have a span, and that span, first of all, we'll check, is there an icon? If there's an icon, then it will display the icon. If there is no icon, then it will just show only the title when the sidebar is open. Now you may not appreciate what this icon is on, but for us to appreciate it, I'll have to go to my sidebar, and this icon here, let me just copy this icon. I'll copy this icon and I'll just add it after my title of the children. So this first one here, I would come here and paste it in, and then I'll save. Don't worry, I just did it so that at least we'll be able to appreciate the icon in the sub menu. So I'll come here and then let's continue. Meanwhile, I don't think you will see anything yet because we've not finished. All right, so but don't worry, you're going to see it eventually. So now that I've displayed this guy here, I'll go ahead and save so that you can appreciate just what it looks like. So you see here, we have this guy and then we have this guy. If you expand it, it turns. If you click on it again, it turns. So the next thing we want to do is, how can we display the sub menu? So if I click here, how can we display this sub menu? Now that is going to be inside another div, which I will give a class name of sidebar content. So let me just bring that in, and like so, I'll come here. So let's look at it. This is the first the first div inside our parent div, and it ends here. So I'm just going to come here, give some space, and I'll create another div here. Okay, so this is going to be sidebar content, and it's inside this sidebar content that I will now map through the children. So how do I map through the children? I would open my curly braces, and then I'll say item dot children dot map. All right, I want to map through them, and I'll represent every single object inside as a child, and then I'm also going to have the index. So now that we've done that, we can now go ahead and open this up with an arrow function. Inside of that, let's now go ahead and return some JSX. So how do we want to return the JSX though? Well, everything is going to be first inside a div. So I'll come here and paste in that div, which I'm going to close like this. Yeah, so everything is going to be inside a div, and this div has a key that is pointing to the index and a class name of sChild, which for me just represents sidebar child. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're now going to now bring in our nav link. Now this nav link we're bringing in is going to be very similar to what we've done here. You see this nav link we created here is going to be very similar. So I have a feeling that I should just, copy it and then do some modification, and I can do that. So I'm just going to copy the nav link. I'll copy it like this, and then I'm just going to come here and paste it inside of this guy. Then I will modify. Now pay attention very closely to the modification. This nav link is going to go to items.path. That's correct. It's going to have a class name of active sublink. So instead of saying active link here, I'll change it to active sublink because we brought that in, and the sub needs to be capital letter. All right, then inside of it now we now have a div, and the div is pointing to sidebar item, and we don't have any parent here, so I'm going to remove the parent. Then I now also see that when you click on it, let's hide the sidebar, so that's also correct. Next, we now have the sidebar title, and then inside of it we have a span tag. This span tag is now going to say item.icon, but now we're not dealing with the item, we're dealing with the child. So we're going to change this item.icon to child.icon, and here we're also going to display the child.icon. Do you see the changes that I'm making? Then also here I'll say that if it's open, I want to display the child.title. So now that we've modified this guy, I can go ahead and wait, let me see, is there any other thing I am missing? I don't think so. I can go ahead and save this file, Ctrl S, and then I'll just come here. So now we can come to this project we're currently working on and see if indeed we have our children. So let's come here and click on this guy, Palam, and voila, you see here that we have these two guys here. The only problem is that we're having the two of them are set to active, which is not supposed to be. So what that means is that there's probably something in our code that is making it set, that's setting two of them to active. So let's just come and take a look at it again. Now I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I know that in this my nav link, I'm supposed to change this item.path to child.path. So let me come here and change this to child.path, and then I'll go ahead and save, and hopefully that fixes the problem. So if I come here and I expand this guy, aha, so if I click on profile now, you'll see that I am now on the profile page. Okay, so what we need to do next is, you see this admin home page, I'm just going to add some content there, and I'm also going to add some content in the profile page, and that's going to come in the next video. I'll see you there. So now let's go ahead and build the admin dashboard homepage, which is this guy you see here. There's really nothing much. It's just this, text here that just says dashboard, and that's it basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring it in and just slot it. Instead of having this home page here, I'll just slot it in. So it's just going to say dashboard, and then this is the user's dashboard page. Go ahead and save that and come to the finished project, and then that should be changed here to this is the user's dashboard page. So in the next video now, we're now going to go ahead and build out the profile page, which is going to look something like this. All right, it's just going to have a name, just like a form field really, with the card. All right, I'll see you in the next one then. All right, so now let's go ahead and build out the profile page. So I'll open this profile page, and the first thing you want to do is you want to bring in the CSS file so that you have access to the styles. This div, however, is going to have a class name of profile, and then we're just going to open it up. Now the first step is to bring in like a header h3 component, which will say profile. So I don't need this second profile here, and then I'm just going to expand it. So if you look at the profile page, what do we have? We simply have this card component, and then there's a form inside of it. So I'll come here, I'll reference the card component, tap that, and make sure you import it. And now this card component is going to have a card class. That card class is just going to be card. Then let's open it up, and remember I say we have a form inside. Form doesn't really do anything, so I'll open that up, and the form is just going to have a label and stuff like that. Label input, label input. So the first one is just going to be, I'll slot in the first one, which is this paragraph. So it's a paragraph because I want it to be on its own line. Then it has a name label and an input field. Well, I did have an empty value and an unchanged that just do a console.log. But you can, well, I may as well just remove it so that it's just consistent. So I'm not going to have a value and an input. So it's just a name and an input. Then I'm also going to have an email. So let me bring in the email field, which is just going to be after the name field. Then I'm also going to remove the value and the unchanged so that you can decide however you want. So then lastly, we're going to have a button that will say update profile. So I'm just going to bring that after the last paragraph and then I'll save. So this is the form, and if you come here to this project and you go to the profile page, you'll see that we have this form here and it just says update profile. So that's about it for the profile page here. All right. Alright, so now I'm aware that if you build a React application, you are most likely going to make HTTP requests to some sort of server or some sort of backend. And I've also covered something that will help us, display a loading spinner while that is in process. So for example, there are two types of loading spinner. When I'm going to the profile page, I have this spinner. And when I'm going to the dashboard page, I have this full screen loader. So I'm going to show you how you can build that now. So what we're going to do is I'm going to head over to my components, and inside the component, I'm going to create a loader folder. Loader. And then inside, we're going to have a loader component file. So loader.js, and then it has a CSS file which I'm going to bring in. All right, now let me do refce, and then save that. Now for the loader component, what I'll do is I'll just bring in the things we need. So we're going to need this loader image, which I'm bringing in from my assets folder, and I'm also going to need React DOM, which I'm going to use to build out the full screen loader. So here, instead of returning this guy here, what I'm going to do is I'll say React DOM, and the React starts with a capital letter. So React DOM dot, and I'll use the create portal method. I'll create a portal here, and that portal is going to have two arguments or two properties. The first is going to be a div. So let me just do dcnn, and this div is going to have a class of wrapper. It has 2p, and then we're just going to open it and put in the content. Now before I put in the content, I'm going to add a comma here, and then I'm going to specify where that div will be located. So I'll copy that, and then I'll just do document.getElements by id, and then I'll point to this loader. As far as the content of the div is concerned, I'm just going to come here inside my wrapper div and slot it in. It's going to have a class of loader, and inside we're just going to have an image that is just going to point to this our loader image. I also give this a style of width, which is 50 pixels, just to make it a little bit small. All right, so now that that is done, this loader div needs to be created in our index.html, and I'll do Ctrl P, and then I'll type index.html. You'll notice that in our index.html, we only have this root div. So what I'll do is I'll duplicate this guy and change this first one to a loader div, and then I'll save. So that's what we need to do to create this first loader. And remember, there are two types of loading spinner. The first, like I said, is this spinner here, which we've not created, and this full screen loader. So now we're going to work on creating the spinner. So what I'm going to do is after this loader, I'm just going to come down to the bottom here and say, let me just do an arrow function, which I'll call spinner, and then don't forget to export it as a named export, and then we'll just open this guy up. Now in this spinner, basically I just want to return something, and what I want to return is just this div that contains the loader. So let me just copy this inner div, and then I'm just going to come here and put it in. However, I'm going to change the class from this regular styles to just a normal class name, and then I'm just going to point to my -- center hyphen all hyphen all. Yeah, so that will just center, you know, whatever this image in the middle of the page. Yes. All right, so now that we have that in place, I can now go ahead and save. We've created the loader. The next thing we need to do is to reference it inside of our dashboard home page and the profile page. So I'll see you in the next video. So now let's go ahead and implement the full screen loader in this dashboard page. So what I'm going to do is, first off, I'm going to bring in a loading component, which I'll set initially to true. So I'll come here, and at the top here, I'll bring in this loader component, and I'll have to import use state first for it to work. Next, I'm going to bring in a use effect, and that use effect is simply going to set the loading to false after 2 seconds. So look at this. Make sure you import use effect, and we just do a set timeout, and that set is loading to false after 2 seconds. That's it basically. Now I will now come inside of this my return statement and have a fragment that will surround everything first. Then I will have this curly braces. I'll say if its loading is equal to true, then I want to display something, else I want to display something else. Now if this loading is equal to true, then what I want to display is my full screen loader component. Make sure you import it as well. Then else I will now display the content of the JSX. Go ahead and save, and that should be implemented here. So you see, for like 2 seconds we have that. So when you're making a HTTP request, you can either display that full screen loader, or you can display the single loader. Now to the spinner. So to display the spinner, we're going to work from the profile page, and basically we're going to have the same thing, like it's loading and this use effect. So I'll copy these guys and come to the profile page and then slot it in at the top. Of course, make sure you import the use state and use effect, and use effect. Very good. Now inside here, I think what I'll do now is, inside of this card is where I'll display the spinner. So in the card, I'll say first off, if is loading is equal to true, then I want to display something, else I want to display something else. So inside this first one, I want to display the spinner. Remember, it's the second type. Close that up. Now in the else statement is where I will now display the form. So let's just wrap it around the form. Yeah, go ahead and save. And now if you come to the profile page, you should see that we have this spinner, and after 2 seconds we now have, so that spinner just represents when your data is being fetched from your database. You're showing the spinner to show to let the user know that something is happening in the background, and afterwards you now show them the data. So that makes a lot of sense for a project, and that's about it for this one. Now, one of the things you want your users to be able to see is, you want them to see a notification whenever they carry out a particular operation. So for example, if I were to update this profile and I click on update profile, then I am getting this notification here that profile updated successfully. So you need a way to notify your user about when something is successful or something fails. Now we have a very popular package for that, and the name of that package is React Toastify, which you can get on npmjs.com. So I'm just going to copy the install command, and then I'll just head over to my own project, and then I'll paste it in. So it's going to be npm install React Toastify, and hit enter. Give it a couple of seconds and it will install, and that's complete. So I'm going to come back here to the page here, and then I'll just show you. Now basically you just need to import this React Toastify and the CSS file. So I'll just copy these 2 lines and I'll put it inside of my app directory. So I'll come to my app, and at the top here I'm just going to add it. All right, I like to add it at the top before I start adding my pages. So let me just add it somewhere here. Now I'm not going to use this toast here, so I'll remove the toast. I just need the toast container. Now this toast container that you've imported, you need to reference it inside at the top of your page or at the top of your component. So maybe I'll just put mine above the header, and I'll just like that and close it up. So that's it. Now I can call the function to toast anywhere in my application, but particularly I want to call it inside of my profile. So in my profile here, you remember we have this form that's not doing anything. Well, I'm going to add an onSubmit to the form, and I would say update profile, which is a function that I have not created. All right, so let's create the function. I'm going to come up here and I will say arrow function, and then I'll say update profile. Here I'm going to add an e, and right here I'll say e dot prevent, sorry, e dot prevent default, and then I'll just open that up. Now this function here, I'm going to now add my toast dot success inside of it, and here I'll just say profile updated successfully, like so. Then I will import this toast, so make sure you import it from React Toastify. So I'm just going to put it at the top here. All right, now before I press save this function to test, I'm going to come to my button and I'll give my button a type of submit. So type of submit, and then I'm going to go ahead and save. Now that I've saved this guy, I will now come to the page I'm working on right now, which is this page, and I will click on update profile. And as you can see, we have profile updated successfully. So now what you need to do in any part of your application, you can add either a toast.success or a toast.error or a toast.info, depending on the kind of message you want to display to the user. All you just need to do is say toast.success and then your message. So that's about it for adding notifications to your application. All right, so one of the last components we're going to add to the project will be our subscription list. So in this my subscription, if you click on it, you'll see here that we have this list of subscription. It's a very important table component for when we are building a project, and we'll need to list some things in the form of a table. So to do that, first off, I'm going to come inside my component here, and I would open up the data. So this data guy here, I'm just going to bring in an array of data. So it's going to be plans, and this is what it looks like. So just plans. It has 3 objects: the starter, the pro, and the enterprise. So that's the first. Next, inside of my components and the admin, I'm going to create a folder which I'll call subscription. So sub, and then inside of the subscription, I'll create 2 files. The first will be sub.js, just to make it short. And then I'm just going to bring in the CSS file, which is going to be sub.css. So just bring it in and then dump it here. Now I'm going to come to my JS and do array fce to create this guy, and then I'll save. Now don't forget, we are also going to import our CSS, the CSS file, like so. Yeah, and that's it. And okay, also I would like to import the plans. So let's import plans. Yeah, and oh, okay, I think I made a mistake there. It needs to be on a fresh line. So plans, very good. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and create the route that will point to this guy. So that's going to be inside our admin.js file where we have all our routes. So inside of admin.js, I'm going to come here and just duplicate this last one, and this is going to say account, account, and that is because inside of the sidebar.js file, let me just reference the sub first, import it. So I'll open my sidebar.js. So inside this sidebar.js, you see here that the path for this my subscription link is admin/account. All right, so having done that in place, I'll go ahead and save this guy. Then we can come here and click on this. Okay, it's already there. So you see we now have this text sub. So in the next video, we're now going to add the components for the sub.js file. All right, I'll see you in the next one then. All right, so now to work on the JSX for this sub file, the first thing I'll do is let me remove this text, and then I'm just going to have a h3 that will say subscription. Subsequently, I will have a div that will have a class name of table, because inside of that we're going to have a table. Now remember, we've brought in this plans, which is the array that contains the plans we want to display on the page. Ideally this should come from your database, but we don't have a database, so let's just work with this. I'm going to put a curly braces, and then I'll first check if plans.length is equal to 0. So if it's empty, then I'll use my ternary operator to display something, and then if it's not empty, I'll display something else. So while it's empty, I just want to have a paragraph text that will say no plans found. All right, now if it's not empty, that's where I'll now go ahead and display my table. So the table is going to just be a regular table. I'll tap that, and remember the table will have a table head and a table body. So let me change this to body. Okay, good. So let's start with the table head. Now this table head is going to have, first of all, it's going to have a row that will have some headings. So th, the headings is going to be, first will be serial number. Then we're just going to, okay, you know what, let me just do 4. Okay, so serial number, name, and price, and lastly it's going to have action. Very good. As for the table body, we're going to come down here and we're now going to map through our plans. So here I'll say plans dot map. Let's open that up. I'll represent every single object inside the plans array as a plan, and then I'm also going to reference the index. Let's go ahead and open this up as an arrow function, which will allow us to return some JSX. Return, like that. I'll open that up. Now I will destructure the properties from the plan. So I'll say const, and what do we have inside our objects? Well, we have a name and a price. So that's going to be equal to plan. Okay, so inside my return statement, I can now come here and display a table row again. So tr, and that table row is just going to have some data. So td. The first will be my index. Okay, sorry, the table row. Oh, I did not tab that correctly. I'm sorry. Okay, good. So now this table row needs to have a key because we are mapping through something, and the key is just going to be our index. Then the first table row here, or table data 1 2 3 4, is going to be our index. So here I'll say index plus 1, and that is because indexes in JavaScript are 0 based, so it's going to start from 0. So that's why you want to add 1 to whatever it is. Then next we have the price. So here I'll just say, sorry, the name. So here I'll say name. Then here I'll say price. It's easy for me to actually duplicate this and say price. Then lastly, I'm just going to have an action, and the action is just going to have a delete icon. Now, of course, I'll just bring that in to save time. So it's just a span that will contain a trash icon. So slot that in. So look at it, it's a span and it contains the trash icon. So just make sure you import it as well. Aha, so that's it. I'll go ahead and save this file, and let's come and see what we have. Voila, so we now have this subscription component, and it's displaying our data on the page. So this is like the final component that we're going to add to our template, and in the next one we're going to see how we can host it on vercel. All right, I'll see you in the next one then. Now, to host your project on vercel, the first thing you need to do is to push that project to GitHub. And this is a barebone project. We've not done anything. We've not pushed it to GitHub. Now, to push it to GitHub, we can do that very easily from Visual Studio Code. So if you click on this GitHub icon here, you will see here that we have all of the changes that we've made. So first off, you should see a button here to initialize your project. If you've not initialized it, just click on it. Or if you like, you can just say git and init, and it will just initialize your project. But Visual Studio Code works very well with Git, and once you have this icon, you should be able to just click on initialize. Next, you need to make at least one commit. If you want to do that manually, you can just say git commit and then have your commit message. All right, but here all you need to do here is just type out your commit message. So I'll just say initial commit, and then I'll just click on commit. It's going to make your commit for you, and the next thing you can now do is to connect this your what's it called, code, to a GitHub repository. Now to do that, you need to come over to github.com, make sure you have an account, and create a new repository. So I'll click on this new button, and it's just going to create a new repository. I'll call that repository react-templates, and then I'll just say course, so that I know I can differentiate it from what I already have. Then I'll just come down, I'll ignore everything here and just click on create repository. All right, so it's going to create the repository here, and we have some instructions that we already have here. Now, this first set of instructions is for a project that has not been initialized. So first off, you need to initialize your repository. You can add a README file if you like, but you need to make a commit and then you need to push that to GitHub. But since we've already initialized our repository, all I just need to do is copy this 3 sets of instruction, and you can copy it and just paste it at once inside of your project. So I'll just paste everything at once and then I'll hit enter. If you hit enter on that, it will, push your repository up to GitHub or up to this remote repository you created on GitHub. I'll come here and I'll refresh this page, and suddenly you'll see that we now have a repository here. So let me expand it. All right, so I've refreshed the page and you see here that our file is now here. So once you have your repository or your code on GitHub, you can go ahead and go to vercel. I assume you have an account on vercel, but if you don't have an account, you can easily create a free account on vercel. Then on your vercel homepage or your dashboard page, make sure you click on your add new and then say you want to add a new project. Now I want to add a new project, and the name of that project, I think it has course. All right. And because I don't have it in my list of repositories that are allowed in vercel, I will need to configure my GitHub app. So click on that. You need to enter your password if you haven't, and then just click on confirm. You'll be able to log into your GitHub and then just scroll down to the place where you can add that specific repository. So I'm just going to say select repository and then I'm just going to add it. So let me just say course, and I should be able to see React template course. So click on that and then click on save. Once I do that, it will add that repository to my vercel and then I can now import it. Now that I've imported it, look at what the name is, React template course. That's fine. And just click on deploy. So I'll click on deploy here and give it a couple of seconds. So it's currently deploying. So it tells me here that the deploy was successful and it gives me a preview of the page. Now, one thing I want to do before I go ahead and view the website is I want to click on add domain. And well, I don't want to add a custom domain. What I want to do is I want to modify the domain that is given to me by vercel. So I'm just going to click on edit, and then maybe I'll just call this React Starter. So maybe I'll say React Starter. starter.vercel.app. Hopefully it's available. I'll click on save. If it's not, oh, I need to change it because it's not available. So let's say React Starter as a single word and then save. And that's not available as well. Okay, so this may take a while. So you know what? I'll just say React R Starter. R Starter. Yeah. Hopefully this is available. So I'll click on save. Okay, it's already been used. So I'm just going to look for something that is, available. All right, so finally I got something that I could use, rs template.vercel.app. So the rs stands for React Starter, then templates.vercel.app. So I was able to, use that, and it's fine. It works. So now to view your project, all you just need to do is click on this icon. It's going to open it in a new tab, and you should be able to see your project. So this is our project here. And if you go to the dashboard, you'll see here that everything works just like we created. Let's see the profile page. All right, so that's the profile page. If you try to update, it shows you that. Let's see the subscription page. It shows you the list of subscription we have, the login page, the login page, the registration page, the forgot password page rather. Everything works perfect. All right, let's also see the responsiveness. So I'm just going to shrink that up to the mobile width so you see it works. I'm also going to go to the dashboard page to see if the menu is also responsive, and as you can see, it works just perfect. So that's about it for the project. Thank you so much for watching this one, and I hope you enjoyed it. Do check out some of my other courses, and if you're not subscribed to us on YouTube, just make sure you subscribe. I'll leave links in the description that will help you advance your journey. Congratulations, my friend, on completing our React Starter Template course. I trust you've learned a thing or two, and I really do hope that by building out this course, when you want to build out new projects, at least it will speed up your workflow to a great extent or to a certain extent. If you are thinking that, oh, how can I improve my web development skills and stuffs like that? How can I be able to initiate projects like this on my own? How can I be able to learn how to think like a programmer and not just learn? Well, you are in the right place. Just make sure to check out all of the courses I've listed before. Like, I take out my time to create courses on various web development topics. So these are the ones I've currently made, and I can assure you that you will learn a lot from them, and it's going to help you become a better developer. Also, if you want to support me, make sure to subscribe to the channel. The name of my channel is Xenotrust Academy. I'm going to leave a link, of course, and make sure to check out my website, xenotrustacademy.com, and just interact, and then we can connect more. I'm also working on a course on how to build and launch a SaaS, software as a service. So I currently have one that I'm working on, and I'm trying to develop. So at the end of that, when I've done experimenting with, I've actually built out the project, but when I'm done experimenting with it, I'm going to take you step by step on how to build, launch, and monetize your SaaS. So it's going to be a very interesting course. So make sure that you keep in touch so that when it's available, you can get notified. So that's about it for the course. Thank you so much for sticking with me to the end. I know it was a long 2 hours, and I will see you in another one. All right.